Justin Love with Computer Generated Dreams. Today I'd like to tell you about the bedtime settings for Disk Clock. So as I was developing Disk Clock, I was also playing around with sort of going to bed when I get tired, getting up when it gets light. And as I was doing that, I started thinking, if I want to get up when it's actually getting light, I have to figure out what time I probably ought to go to bed, just sort of a guideline. So I had this little bedtime period on. If you look over at the right, you can kind of see what is bedtime, what isn't. Now right now it's a little bit hard to see because it's actually overlapping our dusk period just about perfectly. But we could pretend that we're a really late sleeper. And now it's a little bit easier to see that we've got our darker bedtime period extending farther on. Or if you're a really light sleeper, you can set that appropriately. And now we can see a distinction between the bedtime fading and regular darkness. Another option is to set exactly when we start. So twilight is when the sun starts coming up. And or rather when the sky starts getting light. Dawn is when the sun is actually up. And you can use either of those as your base time. You can also take offsets. So for instance, if you want to get up 2 hours before dawn, you do that, and then we'll have bedtime down around here. Or rather, getting up down around here, and bedtime well into daylight. Or you can say after our start period, and we'll be getting up 2 hours after the sun comes up. These offsets become more useful when you're dealing with things like midnight. So you might not actually be getting up in the wee hours of the morning, but if you set the ordinary clock hour, if you set your alarm clock, then that will tell you about when you want to be going to bed and to have a good night's sleep before that time. A variation is solar midnight, which offsets it based on the current position of solar noon, which is a rather big difference when we're in daylight crazy time. Probably the most practical use of this is to set it to half of your sleeping period so that you get a bedtime that's perfectly centered on the darkest time of the night. So that is how you set up bedtime and Disk Clock. I hope it's been helpful for letting you set up your own bedtime.